He understood then. The Grisha lived as shadows did, passing over the surface of the world, touching nothing, forced to change their shapes and hide in corners, driven by fear as shadows were driven by the sun. No safe place, no haven. There will be, he promised in the darkness, new words written upon his heart. I will make one.
Hey everyone, it is Sunday, the day that we turned clocks forward, here in the States anyway. I am so frustrated because I've been trying to film this video like 4 or 5 times and the camera kept dying. I am trying it again today. I'm really tired. I'm so tired today. I was up until like 4 in the morning playing Divinity Original Sin 2. Terrible mistake. I had coffee late last night so I could stay up and play, but it's like when you're a mom and your only free time is in the evening to do anything, it's like you gotta take advantage of it and stay up really late every once in a while. But it's like, was it worth it? I'm really tired today. So a couple of weeks ago, Netflix released the official 2.5-minute teaser trailer for the Shadow and Bone series that's coming out on April 23rd. So of course, that made me want to read the series again. I first read this 2 years ago. I really enjoyed it. I am a huge believer that whatever season of life you're in, just how you're feeling that day, you know, your mood, whatever is going on in your life, really impacts your experience of reading a book. And so at that point in time, this just had all of the tropes and vibes and tones that I needed. I'm a little older now. I have obligations and different responsibilities and stuff going on in my life now. So my experience rereading this series was a little bit different, but I still enjoyed these books a lot. For the second read through of the trilogy, I did listen to these on audio while kind of skimming along with the physical book, whereas the first time I read the ebook with, you know, no audio or anything like that. I originally intended for this video to be a book review and summary of the Shadow and Bone trilogy, but with trying to do this video 4 or 5 times, I just don't know what I'm going to do that. So I'm going to try and sum it up in the least amount of time as possible. So essentially, we're following the protagonist, who is a teenage girl named Alina Starkov. She's an orphan. She grew up in an orphanage with a boy named Mal. The first book starts with a prologue where Mal and Alina are children at the orphanage. They're visited by Grisha, and the Grisha are these magical practitioners, and they basically go around screening children to see if they are presenting the ability to channel the small science, which is the name of magic in the Grishaverse. Mal and Alina are there just peeping on the Grisha. So fast forwards to present day, Mal and Alina are basically soldiers in the First Army of the King of Ravka. And the First Army is a very traditional type of army. They use guns, that kind of weaponry. They have foot soldiers, trackers, cartographers. So Alina is a cartographer. Mal ends up being a really talented tracker. They are at this camp preparing to cross the Shadowfold, and the Shadowfold is just this desolate, barren wasteland that's just veiled in complete darkness, and there are monsters there called the Volcra. This Shadowfold, or the Unsea, splits this country of Ravka in half. There is this second army, which is comprised of the Grisha, which are all of the small science practitioners. The second army is meant to support the kingdom. They're the most effective thing that the kingdom of Ravka has against the Volcra monsters and just crossing the Shadowfold. So this kingdom of Ravka, it has a corrupt king and queen. They have border conflicts to the north and south with other nations. And then to top it off, they have the Shadowfold that slices the country in two. The Shadow and Bone trilogy is a true, like, YA fantasy. You could even argue that it's middle grade. I think you could say it was a middle grade fantasy. You'd be perfectly accurate too. There were definite times when I was listening to it that it felt like Leigh Bardugo had definitely written this series, like written it to market. So she wrote it with a specific audience in mind, young teenagers, tweens, like that age group. You definitely feel that way when you're reading it. It's a first person point of view. You're in the head of Alina only, who is very angsty. She's meek. She has zero confidence. She has no family. Literally her only friend growing up was Mal, and she's just kind of this lonely, awkward girl. In the sense of being in the protagonist's head and her feeling just really young and vulnerable and naive and kind of just pining over Mal because he's grown up to be this handsome guy, this kind of a playboy, and girls are into him and notice him, and he kind of dates around a lot. There is a lot of that. I can understand when people are like frustrated and DNF a book because like they just don't like the girl, but if you're complaining about having to listen to this girl talk about her feelings for 3 different guys, like there are so many series of books out there, like even Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time books, I have read through the first 4 books now, and it's literally always like Matt, Perrin, and Rand, who are these teenage boys who develop these powers and all this stuff. They're kind of main characters of this big epic high fantasy series that is supposed to be adult fantasy. But it's like, even in Wheel of Time, Rand, Perrin, and Matt are always pining over girls and thinking about how, you know, Rand will have a thought like, oh, you know, Perrin and Matt are so good at talking with girls. And then Matt will be like, oh, you know, Rand and Perrin have such a way with girls. Like, I wish I was like that. And so that's just everywhere. If your protagonists are teenagers, that's just how it's going to be. It just comes with the territory. It just comes with the territory. But I will say, as far as middle grade or YA fantasy goes, in terms of world building, the Grishaverse is one of the best. I love hard magic systems and just this idea of Grisha, which Leigh Bardugo has said the word Grisha kind of evokes this imagery of the Japanese geisha. So when you think of the kefta robes that they wear in this and how the concept of beauty is just kind of front and center in all things Grisha culture, that's kind of the predominant things that you notice about, you know, the Japanese, the concept of geisha. So the Grisha is just this really luxurious Russian-inspired culture of small science, magical practitioners. And I just loved how all of that was done. You have 3 different classes of Grisha, the corporalki, the etherealki, and the materialki. So it's like one can summon the different elements. One is kind of like the alchemist, and then you have the corporalki, which are anything to do with the human body. There's like heart renders who can kill a person by stopping their heart. There's tailors that can fix, they're kind of like magical plastic surgeons almost. There's all kinds. So I really love the hard magic system in the Grishaverse. Moreover, and it's something that I don't really see a lot in middle grade or YA fantasy, is that there is this overarching theme throughout the series, and even in the duologies that came after. You have the Grisha, which is the second army, and they work with magic, and you have the first army, which are the traditional foot soldiers who use guns and that kind of weaponry. One of the big themes throughout the series is this idea of human advancement and progression versus magic. And so that's kind of this big conflict here. And so when we meet the Darkling, General Kerrigan, who's the leader of the second army, but turns out we find out he's the Darkling and he can channel shadow power. He has noble beliefs in that he wants the Grisha to be treated equally, the same as regular humans, instead of always being targeted to be enslaved for the king or queen or whatever. He actually doesn't like the king or queen of Ravka. He ends up kind of convincing Alina, because she is the only sun summoner, that her life is going to be in danger, and so she needs to go to the little palace at the capital of Os Alta to learn to be powerful so that she can defend herself against, you know, these outside threats. The series is called Shadow and Bone. Shadow because, you know, the Darkling, that is what he can summon, darkness. And Bone because there are these things called Amplifiers, and they're taken from, you know, stag antlers or sea serpent scales or the feathers of a firebird or something like that. And even living human beings can be amplifiers, which is dangerous for those Grisha who are living amplifiers, because lots of Grisha actually seek out these amplifier animals or even other living amplifier humans, because adorning their bones actually enhances their own magical abilities. So there are a lot of Grisha out there who it isn't beneath them to murder other people for that. Another thing that Leigh Bardugo does extremely well in this middle grade YA fantasy series is lore. A lot of series, especially geared towards a younger audience, they don't really dive into the character backstories and the events in the main character's past that kind of molded them into who they became later. The Darkling, case in point. She wrote The Demon in the Woods to kind of give more color to the kind of upbringing he had with Baghra as his mother. There's just all of this kind of dark fable, like dark lore that is woven into the series. When Bardugo published these additional short story collections, The Language of Thorns, which the children of Ravka would have grown up hearing, which some of these stories in this book are really, really dark. There's pedophilia and murder. It's a really fascinating collection of stories. You just get to see more behind the curtain on what kind of childhood the Darkling had. His mother was this very independent, powerful Grisha woman who was a living amplifier. She was always on the lookout for people trying to kill her. She's the type of person that just kind of breeds with other powerful men to try and create powerful offspring. She was always on the run. She kind of subjected the Darkling to that. So his mother is just this huge influence into how he turned out the way he did. She basically kind of ingrained it into his skull, this idea of him needing to be powerful and self-sustaining, really, and just only trust himself and rely on himself and not get too close to anyone. And you really see how that translated to the Darkling in the original Grisha Trilogy. So it's just stories like that. Not to be super spoilery, but definitely check out the mermaid retelling that's in this collection, because it has the main character Ulla. If you've read all of the Grishaverse books, you know that Ulla is the Darkling's half-sister. There's a story in here where they meet. I cannot express to you like how good this collection of stories is. So you have that lore. Leigh Bardugo writing an entire book of fables, dark fables, that the children of this country would grow up hearing and being told around the hearth at night. And then you have The Lives of Saints, which she most recently published, which is a collection of stories centered on the different saints that are kind of worshipped in the Grisha world. So you have Alina's story in here, you have the Darkling's father, his story is in here, and you have his half-sister Ulla, her story is in here. So it's just different short stories of the different saints. I just love that kind of lore. And look at this book. Like, it is such a sturdy, gorgeous book. Every time I hold this book, I feel like a Grisha. I feel like I'm at the little palace and I'm studying. You know, I would definitely be in Etherealky, I think. These books are gorgeous. The thing that I love about Leigh Bardugo's writing is she does so much research into how she's crafting the world. I feel like people either really love her books or people criticize them without end because they claim that she has reappropriated the Russian culture, whenever she has just really taken Russian influence and mixed it with Latin and Japanese culture even, and is creating her own thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's fantasy. But obviously Leigh Bardugo did something right if it is now getting a Netflix adaptation that looks amazing. I just love the world building, the lore, just the richness that she has added with character backstories. I'm excited to see this adaptation. And it was definitely interesting going back and listening to this series, because Alina is probably not ever going to be one of my top favorite protagonists to ever read, you know, the point of view of, but I can understand where she's coming from. She's literally never had anyone ever growing up. She knows absolutely nothing about her past. She didn't even know she had power. She didn't even know that she was suppressing it as a defense mechanism, as a survival instinct. And another thing I love about these books is like when it comes full circle. So if you open the book with a really touching prologue between her and Mal, this little boy that she grew up with. For me, it needs to come full circle, and that it will end with them. Now, whether that's sad or happy, like, it has to come back around to them. The fact that Leigh Bardugo was able to sell this book series within 37 days of querying it, she did something right. The first time I read this series, I wanted the Darkling to redeem himself and end up with Alina. I wanted something happy for him. This time around, I was just kind of grossed out by the fact that he was so old and he was manipulating Alina and just trying to seduce her with not just like romance, but the allure of power. And it was just really slimy and gross, and his intentions were so obvious. Mal was always the right one for her. Nikolai was also a particular favorite, so I was really happy when he got his own duology. I love these books so much. My plan is to read the Six of Crows duology next. I'm probably going to listen to it as well because mom life. And then I'm going to read King of Scars right before Rule of Wolves comes out on March 30th. Like, I am dying to get my copy. And I am so excited. I just wanted to open up my thoughts and insights on the Shadow and Bone trilogy by Leigh Bardugo, because I do think like it is one of the better world building and lore and just like the depth of the world. Like, it's just one of the better ones out there. I'm going to try and speed read through Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. Stay tuned for that one. Hopefully it'll be up in a couple weeks. So hope you enjoyed my rambling, and I will talk to you soon. All right, bye.